This episode is brought to you by Pepsi Wild Cherry. Pepsi Wild Cherry is bursting with delicious cherry flavor and a sweet, crisp taste that gives you more to go wild for. Getting wild may look different these days, but whether it's opting for a solo Friday binge watch or a big night out, everyone can indulge in their wild side with Pepsi Wild Cherry. Also available in Zero Sugar. So grab a Pepsi Wild Cherry and get wild.
Welcome back, Ram fans. This is Rams Up, your favorite LA Rams podcast. We are proud members of the Fans First Sports Network. That's fansfirstsports.com. You can also follow us on YouTube. Our channel is at LA Rams Up. I'm your host, Mark. You'll hear from my co-host, Tom, on occasion as well. Hey, we're not Rams insiders. We're just longtime fans who love talking about our Los Angeles Rams. Let's get to it. Welcome back, everybody. Episode 376 of Rams Up. Some breaking news as I'm recording this. The Rams have hired Iowa State offensive coordinator Nate Scheelhaase as their pass game specialist. 33 years old, was an all-Big Ten quarterback at Illinois. Guess a lot of NFL teams have been interested in him. Hot commodity. And he comes over to the Rams, which means, of course, Coach Scheelhaase will move on to the Bears as their head coach in a couple of years. That's just the way it works. Primary focus of this episode, mock drafts and draft prospects. I shared my third mock draft on the YouTube channel. You can check it out right now and follow along as I make these picks. And I'm sharing it on this podcast as well, coming up here in a second. And the one thing I am finding out very quickly is I got to do more homework. And there's time for that. You want to ace the test, you got to study. And that's what I started to do, doing a little bit deeper dive. I went through the top 100 players on Draft Tech's list, and got to be aware a lot of these sites are not in agreement on the top 100 players, not even the top 10 players. But I used Draft Tech's site, went through their top 100 players and made an assessment. And after this mock draft coming up here in a second that I'm going to share with you, I'm going to identify a handful of players that I am taking off my draft board for the Los Angeles Rams. Now, does that mean if some of these guys are available in the 6th or 7th round, I'd still pass on them? Absolutely not. But guys that I don't think I want our Rams drafting if they're available about where they're supposed to get drafted. Just not a good fit or something I don't like about them. And there will probably be a couple of surprises. Eventually, I'll share that whole draft board with you. But baby steps here. Mock draft number 3 coming up, followed by a handful of players that I'm not liking for the Los Angeles Rams, and I'll try to explain why. Episode 376, let's real quickly talk about a player who wore number 76. You know, we talked about number 74, Merlin Olsen, number 75, Deacon Jones, number 76, Rosie Greer. Rosie Greer, the third of the 4 members of the Fearsome Foursome, 6'5", 284 pounds out of Penn State, drafted by the New York Giants in 1955, round 3, pick 31 overall. And then after 8 seasons with the Giants, traded to the Rams in July of 1963, and played 4 years for the Rams. That was the heyday of the Fearsome Foursome, those 4 years, 63 through 66. Rosie Greer went on to a pretty successful TV career and actually threw his name in the hat for Governor of California very briefly. Rosie Greer, the third member of the Fearsome Foursome, eventually will get around to the remaining member, Lamar Lundy. Let's get into my third mock draft. Now, I made some new assumptions for this mock draft. The Rams had re-signed Ahkello Witherspoon and Kevin Dotson, probably their 2 key free agents, their own 2 free agents that could walk. Rams have retained both of them. However, Jordan Fuller has signed elsewhere, John Johnson and Demarcus Robinson and Coleman Shelton all remain unsigned, so could still possibly return to the Rams. But as far as the Rams are concerned, They're moving forward without them in this draft, and these players could be losing some leverage, having not re-signed with the Rams yet. So how did I do? With the 19th pick overall, I selected, according to the NFL Mock Draft Database, the 12th overall rated player, Terrion Arnold, the cornerback out of Alabama, 6 feet 196. This guy's a complete cornerback, but he is a converted safety. He may still have some growing to do. How well does he process routes and such? But a solid addition. We've already retained Witherspoon, which was one of the premises here. We add this guy to this group. Cornerback room is suddenly looking pretty good. With the Rams' second pick, 52nd overall. Now, I'm not sure how realistic this is. On Draft Tech, this next player was the 24th rated overall player, but on an NFL Mock Draft Database, he was the 60th ranked player. Leonard Taylor, the defensive lineman. Now, there have been a couple instances where players were available that it just wasn't realistic, and I passed on them. Maybe I should have done the same with Taylor. Is he really going to last until the middle of the second round? But he was there. I took him. 6'3", 304. Another guy with a high ceiling. Rotate him in his rookie year, spelling guys like Bobby Brown and Kobe Turner. He's a 3 technique for the most part. But with Terrion Arnold and Leonard Taylor in the house, I think we can say we have 2 units locked down, the cornerbacks and the defensive line. The Rams' third pick, 83rd overall, got another good value, the 59th ranked player on Draft Tech's board, Javon Bullard, the 5'11", 180-pound safety out of Georgia. I've seen him listed from 180 to 195, so possibly a tad undersized. This guy is not a risk taker, but he's great covering routes. More of a coverage safety than a thumper. Now, under this premise, we've lost one safety for sure and possibly another. Need to add a safety, so we get Bullard in the third round. The 100th pick overall is the one we got for the Raheem Morris signing at the end of the third round, and we take another Bulldog, Cedric Van Pran, interior offensive lineman, probably a center, 6'3", 310 pounds, scheme versatile, physical run blocker, just gives us more versatility along the front, and if we waive Brian Allen in a salary cap move, adding Van Pran would make sense. Meaning, of course, Steve Avila would be our starting center, Van Pran would be his backup. Second straight pick from Georgia, so we've gone Alabama, Miami, Georgia with our first 4 picks. Hopefully these guys can all get along. Now, we didn't have another pick until the 5th round, number 153 overall, and we got some value, the 140th ranked player, Jacob Cowing, the wide receiver out of Arizona. I took the highest rated wide receiver on the board and should have done a deeper dive, should have had my homework done. He's 5'10", 175, strictly a slot receiver. And hey, maybe the Rams will fall in love with him, but he's not the type of guy I see them trying to draft at this point. But then again, he's very similar in size to Zay Flowers, the guy Sean McVay was rumored to have tried to trade up for in last year's draft. So maybe they will like him. Maybe this is a good pick. Not sure. But he's our first 5th round pick, Jacob Cowing out of Arizona. Another pick in the 5th round, 154 overall. We got the 116th ranked player. We take Sione Vaki, the safety out of Utah. Just fell in love with this guy. Paul Walia's favorite player in the draft. I think I've mentioned that a few times. 6 feet, 208. He can play special teams. He can even play running back, but he is a safety. And I really hesitated on making this pick, but I just couldn't resist. And right now, our starters at safety are who? Russ Easton, Jason Taylor, Russ Easton, Quentin Lake. Now we've added Javon Bullard. Throw him into the mix. Let's add Sione Vaki as well. Our next pick, 177 overall, we take the 130th ranked player, Jaylan Ford, a linebacker. And by the way, some of these rankings are from the mock draft database, some of them from Draft Tech, kind of mixing and matching here. Jaylan Ford, a linebacker out of Texas, 6'3", 236. I've actually seen him listed at 240, just one of those big physical run-stopping linebackers. But he's a good athlete too. Still say we're a little thin at that position, and linebackers can always help on special teams, so we go with Ford. And the next pick, the first guy maybe reached a little bit on, the running back out of New Hampshire, Dylan Lobby, 5'10", 208. He's just a natural playmaker. He can move the chains, but he's also just a great all-around player. Not sure if it's the type of guy the Rams will gravitate towards. He's another guy that would be a great special teams player, maybe even a returner. Not sure if he did that in college, but type of guy that can do a little bit of everything. So why not draft Dylan Lobby, see if he can make this team. The next pick, 212 overall, I took the kicker Joshua Carty. I've been pretty consistent adding a kicker to my drafts. Now, this is an 11-player draft, and I've been arguing that the Rams will probably end up with 8 or 9 picks. I could be wrong on that, but that's what I'm thinking. And if they do, they're probably not going to draft a kicker. But if they end up with 11 picks or more, they're going to sign a veteran and draft someone like Joshua Carty. Got to get this place kicking situation figured out. We get a kicker in the 6th round that's better than the guy the 49ers got in the 3rd round and may have cost them the Super Bowl. 2 7th-round picks back-to-back. Number 217, edge rusher Jalix Hunt. Now, the Draft Buzz calls him a hybrid safety edge, which is really odd for a guy that's 6'4", 250. Looks like an edge rusher to me. Made his name as a guy who brings the wood, crushes ball carriers and receivers, plays with an edge. And in the mold of Daniel Hardy and Chris Garrett, we bring in a small school, Houston Baptist, edge rusher, and see if he can make a splash. And our last pick, 218 overall, really good value here, that 162nd ranked player, Julian Pearl, a 6'6", 315-pound offensive tackle out of Illinois. Coaches will love him, fundamentally sound, high IQ, but shows some nastiness in the run game. Played 2 years at right tackle at Illinois before switching over to left tackle. Solid everywhere, just not elite in one area. Sounds like the type of guy that could compete as a swing tackle, back up whoever our left tackle is, and Rob Havenstein. And hey, maybe we get lucky and he's a future starter. So that is my 3rd mock draft. Feel pretty good about this one. Not sure about the running back and wide receiver we selected, but most of the other ones, pretty happy with that, especially Terrion Arnold, Leonard Taylor, Javon Bullard, and Sione Vaki, and Cedric Van Pran as well. I think we got 5 guys that are going to make this roster show up and compete and be impact players. And then the kicker, I think Carty's a sure thing too. Next up, the results of my homework. Bunch of guys I am taking off my Rams draft board. All right, it's obviously time I do a deeper dive into these players and start narrowing it down. Which players do I really like for our Los Angeles Rams? Which ones might not be a good fit? Which ones perhaps have holes in their game that we need to be aware of? And I'm going to start sharing more of these details with you as we go. A couple of episodes ago, I shared 10 prospects that I really liked, and I'll refine that list. It'll grow as we move along, and I'll eventually rack and stack them. This episode, I'm going to share a bunch of prospects with you that I'm kind of cooling on, or after looking into them, not really feeling it for our Los Angeles Rams, and there will be a couple of surprises. One of the guys that's not going to end up on this list, originally I thought maybe he should, and I was kicking myself, what do I do about this guy? And that's Talisi Fuaga, the tackle out of Oregon State. And I started reading some sites where they were arguing that he's going to have to play guard or right tackle. And if that's the case, he's still a great prospect regardless of where you plug him, but I'm thinking left tackle. And if he can't play left tackle, I'm not taking him in the 1st round. And then I ran across a video by Daniel Jeremiah, one of my favorite prospect evaluators, and he made a very strong argument, Fuaga, saying he could play anywhere. He can play left or right tackle. He can play either guard position. He has no limitations. He's obviously going to end up at one of the tackle positions. And if the Rams take him, he would be their new left tackle. And Jeremiah also saying Fuaga is the best run blocker in this draft, period, any position. So Fuaga's not on this list of players I'm cooling on. Who am I cooling on? Well, J.C. Latham, the offensive tackle out of Alabama. They're saying he's strictly a right tackle, and he would have to be a 1st-round pick if you're going to grab him, maybe early in the 2nd. I'm not drafting a guy whose only role next year would be backing up Rob Havenstein, or even if he's going to be his eventual replacement. Not what I want in this year's draft. Another guy I'm cooling on is Dallas Turner, the edge rusher out of Alabama. No doubting his skill set, but his size is really worrisome to me for an edge rusher, 6'3", 242. And I'm going to bring up another edge rusher in that same category later and have some more commentary on that. Another offensive tackle that I'm cooling on, Amarius Mims out of Georgia. And the reason for that is it is evident he has the tools and the skill set to eventually be an NFL tackle. He's not going to take over a starting job unless it's in an emergency situation, or if it's for a team that's really depleted across the offensive line, maybe he gets a shot at starting. He's going to need some time, some coaching up, in my opinion, from what I read, before he's ready to go. That's not what we're looking for in our 2024 offensive line draft picks, especially in the first couple of rounds. Kind of the same for Tyler Goyton. I've seen people mocking him to the Rams. He's the offensive tackle out of Oklahoma, 6'7", 327, and it looks like he's limited to the right side as well. Again, same issue as with J.C. Latham. I'm not drafting a right tackle. Now, if I'm wrong on that, he can play the left side, I'll change my mind. Anybody else I'm cooling on? Well, there's the tight end, Jatavion Sanders out of Texas, 6'4", 242. Now, I'm not drafting a tight end that early unless it's Brock Bowers, which I don't think that's going to happen. But Sanders probably going to go in the first 2 rounds. I'm tempted to take every tight end off the board for our Rams in the first 2 rounds, but there may be someone Sean McVay really likes. And Sanders, admirable skill set. He's going to beat linebackers. They can't cover him, but he can't really handle inline blocking, apparently. I don't think that's what the Rams want in a tight end. They need tight ends that can block and receive, get down the field, maybe even a little bit in the screen game. Now, Sanders can do those last 2 things, but he cannot handle the blocking. Who else am I cooling on? Kalen Carson, the cornerback out of Wake Forest. Good man coverage guy and run support, but he's very handsy, reminiscent of Darion Kendrick. He's going to get a lot of flags. We're looking for cornerbacks that are versatile, can handle zone assignments, and I don't think Carson's the guy. And another cornerback I'm not thrilled about, Chris Abrams-Draine out of Missouri. Now, I've seen a lot of Ram fans mocking him to our team, talking him up, but he seems like he's really going to be limited in what he can do for a secondary. 5'11", 178, strictly a nickel cornerback probably. Just has real limitations, and I'm not thrilled with that idea. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. That's how I feel about him today, though. Next up, Michael Hall Jr., the defensive lineman out of Ohio State. He's a 5 technique, 6'2", 280, kind of a tweener, a little undersized for my liking. Not going to characterize him as an edge, just a defensive end. Really has limitations. Christian Haynes, the offensive guard out of UConn, 6'3", 305, really athletic, lends itself to a zone running scheme. Unless the Rams return to more of a zone scheme again, a zone rushing attack, Haynes isn't a good fit for this offense. Will Shipley, the running back out of Clemson, 5'10", 205. He does a few things really well, but not good enough to be a regular contributor in this offense. He's a liability between the tackles and in pass pro. Really good on jet sweeps, getting the ball on the edge, that type of thing. But we need someone that can rotate in and take some carries off of Kyron Williams' shoulders. And I don't think Shipley's the guy. McKinley Jackson, defensive lineman out of Texas A&M, 6'2", 331. He's just a pure run stopper, reminiscent of Bobby Brown. If you're looking for depth, sure, I guess, or someone to replace Bobby Brown. I just think we have bigger needs. We're not spending a 3rd round pick on McKinley Jackson. Doesn't have enough tools for me. Same school as Bobby Brown and similar size, actually. Doesn't bring enough to the table for my liking. Now, again, he's one of those guys, if he slid a couple rounds, might jump on him. I've also seen people mocking quarterback Michael Pratt out of Tulane to the Rams. He's number 92 on Draft Tech's board. 6'3", 220, so he's got the profile to be a really successful pocket passer in the NFL. On the surface, perfectly able to get it done. Closer look, he lacks elite arm strength and has a long delivery. Would he be Matthew Stafford's heir apparent? I don't think so. Is he going to bring anything as a backup quarterback next year? Yeah, possibly. Are you going to use a third-round pick for that? I don't think so. We need to get someone like Carson Wentz on board or one of these free agent quarterbacks as our backup. Yeah, draft a quarterback maybe, but not a third-round pick, and that's probably what it's going to take for Pratt. Here's another edge rusher, Jonas Ellis out of Utah, 6'2", 243, has all the elite traits. But just like Dallas Turner, what really concerns me is the size, 6'2", 243. The Rams have not had luck with these 240-pound edge rushers. That would include Daniel Hardy and Chris Garrett. Now, I realize Dallas Turner and Jonah Ellis are much better prospects than Hardy or Garrett, but I want to see edge rushers 250, 255, 260, and Turner and Ellis just don't cut it for me. Zach Zinter, the offensive guard out of Michigan, he's the one that got hurt, couldn't play in the championship game. Another guy that's going to be successful at the NFL level, but he has some limitations, especially in the run game. Not real nasty, not that nastiness we like to see, like we see from guys like Cooper Beebe. If Zinter slid to the 5th round, maybe take a flyer on him. That's the names I have in the top 100 of Draft Tech's board that I am taking off our board. I also identified some new names that I really like for the Los Angeles Rams, and I'm not going to share them all with you now. I want to share one with you, though. One guy that really got me excited. Now, I'm not sure where he's going to go in the draft. Could be anywhere from the 2nd to the 4th round, and that's Ladd McConkey, the wide receiver out of Georgia, 6 feet, 185. Just fits everything the Rams do. Go watch his highlights, and you tell me who he reminds you of, and get back to me. Ladd McConkey. He'll be on my next list of players I love for our Los Angeles Rams. And I have some other names here. We'll save that for another episode. Those are my handful of players. I'm not sure how many there were there, but the guys that I'm taking off my draft board for now anyways. I reserve the right to change my mind, but guys that don't fit our Rams, and I'm preferring the Rams pass on them unless, of course, they're available later than they are expected to go. That's going to do it for this episode. Remember, you can reach us at ramsuppodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget about our YouTube channel. Our handle is at laramsup.com. Till next time, keep the horns up, stay safe, and have fun out there.